we truly need to believe that every single human being deserves a good life. Everybody deserves to live well. And so it starts with the self. I need to believe that I deserve it. That's my natural state. And I also need to believe that every single human being in front of me, next to me, and far away also deserves that. And that we need to work on the systems around the world that prevent that from happening.
Welcome to another Finishing Strong podcast. If you haven't joined us before, Finishing Strong is dedicated to helping people transition from working full-time to something else and to integrate their faith with their new purpose. I'm happy to be joined today by Carolina, or Caro Lasso. Carolina and I met through a great organization called Modern Elder Academy, where she is a frequent facilitator and leader and speaker in both their online and in-person offerings. Carolina is from Colombia. She holds a bachelor's degree in international business from the University of Maryland, an MBA from NYU, and she's worked in some incredibly great jobs through Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute, Google, American Express, and Telemundo. She's also the author of the book, The Path to Flourishing, or the Spanish version is called Plenari. In the book, Carolina shares her story of transformation. In the midst of a really successful but taxing career, she hit a wall. And she shares her story of not only surviving, but learning to thrive and to flourish and live with purpose. I know you're going to enjoy learning more about Carolina and hearing her story and her encouragement. Well, Carolina, thank you so much for joining us today. You and I got to know each other a little bit through a Modern Elder Academy online program, and I know you're going to be speaking at a couple of their gatherings here in the next year. So, thanks for being with me today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to speak with you, and it's a pleasure to have these conversations, friendly conversations. They just happen to be recorded, right?
Right. Then that's just what it is. Well, I just appreciate how you've shared your experiences in your book at the MEA gatherings that we've been through and through the podcast world. And your main book in English is The Path to Flourishing, and I believe that the Spanish translation of that book is Plentitude. Do I have that right?
Plenitud. Yeah, it's a word that is really hard to translate into English. I actually could not find the translation for it. So I went with flourishing. It's the closest it gets. So the path to flourishing. Yeah, plenitud.
Okay. Well, you write, it was really interesting. You write that the reason for writing the book was to unleash something I'm holding in my heart, something that's crying out to be shared, which is, gosh, take me to the next page, right? So let's start with your story. Fill our listeners in on your background and some of those events to your sharing your story.
Yeah, sure. So, where to start? Let's start with the beginning. I grew up in Colombia in South America, and then I moved to the US to go to college, is what I thought. And I ended up doing really well. I was one of those super dedicated, studious nerd, you could call me. And so I did really well, ended up getting a full ride to go to college, and then went to get a master's degree, have an MBA at NYU, and then start working in financial services in Manhattan. Eventually, I also worked in Washington, D.C. in media and entertainment. And then Google called, knocked at my door. I'm like, sure, I'll open the door. So I went to work at the headquarters in Silicon Valley. I was there for about 7 years. And the story I always tell is that I was following all the shoots that I thought I needed to follow in order to be happy. I was checking all the boxes from the lists we get, go to school and then graduate and do the next thing and be the best student and then get your scholarship and then college and then get married and then find a really good company. And I did all of that.
Yeah.
You know what happened, Jamie, was that I eventually went through a divorce. And when that happened, I was living in California and I didn't really have a support network in California because I was really new to the place. And then I didn't have a whole lot of people. My marriage was not working. And so I put all my energy, all my time, all my devotion to work. And somehow I think I pretty much gave all my energy, like my job became my only source of meaning and happiness. And I ended up overworking, of course, and I burnt out. I completely burnt out. I hit a wall and it was rough. Then I started having anxiety episodes and depression. And I got to the point when I couldn't mask it any longer because for the longest time I would go to work wearing my mask and pretending to be okay. But at some point I couldn't do it anymore. I was not okay. And it was really hard for me to talk about it. There is so much around mental health at work. In my case, I felt weak, as if as if I was not strong enough, as if I was not cut for it, as if I just needed to keep working, keep on going, that inner spirit of like, you're resilient, keep on going, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. But I couldn't. And I think that's something that we really need to face and talk about and have those conversations at work. But anyway, what ended up happening was that I couldn't take it. And so I ended up, my doctor recommended a leave of absence, which I followed the instructions, and I was out for 6 months. I didn't want to stay there. I didn't want to be close to my ex-husband. I didn't want to be close to my friends. I didn't want to run into people. I left. I took a suitcase and I left and I started traveling the world, something that I love to do. And I went around the world seeking answers, seeking. So my quest was this: if I followed all the steps that I was supposed to follow to be happy and I wasn't happy, then I was looking for the recipe of happiness. I figured other people would have the answer. I figured if I could study every culture and every tradition and every type of philosophy and wisdom and ancestral knowledge, I could find the answer. And in a way, I did. And so during that trip, I studied so much. I read all the books, I listened to all the podcasts, all the books, all the watched all the videos, went to all the conferences, signed up for all the classes that I could. And what I found was 7 principles, what I call the 7 principles that lead us to a flourishing life. And when I got back, something shifted. Something shifted when I got back from that trip. I still stayed at Google. I was working there for a full year. And then I got certified into a program called Search Inside Yourself, which was born at Google, then spun off into its own nonprofit organization. And I went to work there for 5 years. A couple of years ago, I decided to quit and start my own Flourishing Academy and became a purpose mentor. And that's what I do today. I work with people to pretty much, since I've walked the path and I went through the ups and downs of connecting with my purpose. That's what I love to do. And I work with people to find that which gives them a sense of meaning and a sense of well-being, and so that they can flourish overall.
Wow.
That's the long story. Sorry about
No,
that.
but that's a great story. And your book reflects, obviously a longer version of that story, but I found, and it's just so people know, we'll put it in the show notes. Of course, the book is officially called, it's available on Amazon, was an Amazon, is an Amazon bestseller. It's called The Path to Flourishing: 7 Principles for a Joyful, Fulfilling, and Purposeful life, which that was one of my connections with you, right? My tagline in Finishing Strong is live with purpose. So that was one of the things that brought us together. And in that book, you write, you being the listeners were or readers were born to wake up each morning feeling deep satisfaction and a great sense of purpose, to enjoy each present moment with vitality and well-being, to thrive, to reach your fullest potential, and to have an abundant life, have the abundant life you long for, and to leave your mark on the world. And so many of the people that follow me or have been a part of my programs come from a faith-based background, and Jesus said something similar. He said, "I have come that you might have life and have it abundantly." And it matches so well with what you said. But help us understand what you mean before we go into this to the seven principles. Help us understand, what you mean by that, kind of one of your opening salvos on, that we're born to wake up each morning feeling that deep satisfaction. Tell us what you mean by that. And then what you see in the world. One of the things about purpose is that you oftentimes, what we do helps fill a gap that's not being met. And so, talk about what you see in the world of people, in your experience of people not experiencing that vitality, not experiencing that abundant life.
Mm, such a deep question.
It is a deep question.
But I think during that quest, I realized that for myself. And then I realized, oh, gee, I'm not the only one. This is for everybody. And I
Yeah.
wholeheartedly believe that each person was born to live a good life, a
Yeah.
life of meaning, a life where all our needs are satisfied, a life where we can unlock our full potential is the phrase I use frequently, but a life where we can be well. And it doesn't mean that it's a life with a full absence of issues. I mean, it is human, universally human, to have difficulty, to encounter roadblocks, to have loss and illness and grief. It's part of the experience. So I think that the invitation here is for us to think about those events as universally human and as something that we cannot control, and that things happen because that's just the nature of being alive, but that we can learn how to navigate those events. So that's one. But the second one is, we truly need to believe that every single human being deserves a good life. Everybody deserves to live well. And so it starts with the self. I need to believe that I deserve it. That's my natural state. And I also need to believe that every single human being in front of me, next to me, and far away also deserves that. And that we need to work on the systems around the world that prevent that from happening. So it's both an intrapersonal and interpersonal, so it's a collective invitation. And I think that has become my life mission, to contribute. I'm not going to change the world on my own, but contribute to make that happen. Because no person should be left behind.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's a great perspective, and certainly I wish there was more of that in our world, but it is with you, and so that's what we're gonna unpack, because you do offer a solution to and a pathway for people to experience that, and it's not just sort of one, two, three self-help kind of deal. I think what I liked about your book is that it's born out of your experience. It was, you didn't come at it to how to survive after you went through all that you went through. You came out with how to flourish. And I do believe we all want to just not just exist, not just be, and whether we believe we deserve it or we want it, either way, that we have this opportunity to live this abundant and flourishing life. And you had the magic in the book of being able to, I think, also weave in your love stories throughout the book, broken and healing, and also new love stories and a marriage and all that kind of stuff. So it was just a great thing to see as you wove together, telling your story, but then also sharing this discovery that you have with the
Mm.
seven principles. And I just say, I think you've created the pathway for us as we all try to seek what is it like to live a flourishing life. You say your approach can be wrapped up in a single sentence. We can achieve a state of flourishing when we are in complete connection with our inner self by cultivating the seven principles. So let's go through the seven principles. And as hard as I go, and you go, we all do, and many people who are listening to this are kind of full the throttles fully open and the accelerators pressed. But your first step in this is pause. So walk us through step one first, which is the beginning, right? The beginning of the pathway.
Yeah, it's the beginning. It's fundamental, meaning the basis of everything that allows us to do that personal growth, that personal introspection. So, taking a moment to pause. And in the book, I talk about different ways you can explore what that means. So, anywhere from, oh, gee, I'm going to take 3 breaths before I send this ugly email that I may regret later, all the way to what I ended up doing, which is a big pause in my life, which I now think about it. And my goodness, that time that I took for myself, one, changed my life. Two, led to this book. Three, was so enriching. And I have so many anecdotes that I couldn't put all the stories in the book. And I always think if I had just stayed in my regular life, the 6 months would have just passed by. But I
Mm.
decided to give that gift to myself, completely understanding it comes from the privilege of taking a sabbatical like that, taking time off like that, which I understand not everybody can take. But if anyone feels compelled, invited, and has the opportunity to pause, we were talking before we started about retreats and
Yeah.
spaces to connect with people, to connect ourselves. Those are just so important. So, a moment to stop, to stop. We are in this world that feels like a hamster wheel, and we're just doing all the time. And we are not human doings. And so going back to the being, going back to the self again and again, whether it's 5 minutes, whether it's 3 hours, whether it's a
Mm.
full week, it's just so fundamental, so important.
So you've got an acronym to help people think through this pause process. STOOP. What does that stand for?
Yeah, it's like, stop.
Yeah,
That's
like
how I
it.
thought about
Like it.
it. So take a moment to stop, take a moment, pause. Then the T stands for take a breath. O stands for observe the situation. What's going on here? Whenever we're triggered in particular, I always use this tool. Observe what's going on. And be open is the next O, right? Be open to whatever, any possibility that may come your way. But it invites you to observe, to explore, to go deeper. I like to say to double click, right? So if
Yeah.
I'm having an emotion, whether it's rage or disappointment or frustration, double click on it. What's going on here?
Mm.
Why?
Mm.
What's triggering it? What is it really telling me? I always say that emotions are beautiful vehicles that bring a pearl of wisdom. And so listening to those emotions. And then P for proceed. After you've taken
Yeah.
all of that information, after you've done your inquiry, then really taking the proactive, not reactive, but proactive approach of responding in a way that is in service in that situation.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. And I think a lot of the people that are connected in my community are people who are getting ready to retire. They might have retired already, and they're trying to figure out what the next season is like, what's meaning in their next season. And so, I do encourage people to take that time to pause, to stop, and take a break between the crazy career and just the potential that's flourishing, that could be flourishing with them in the future. So love that first step. Okay, second step is presence. Tell us about
That's right.
presence.
The second principle is presence. So once you've taken a moment to stop, to pause, then inviting presence into our life. And so often we're thinking about what's next, right? We're so future oriented, or we may get caught up in the past, like, oh, I should have done that. I should have said that, or oh, the good old times kind of thing. And it's okay, of course, to remember things, to have good memories. It's very important to plan ahead. Absolutely. But how beautiful is it for us to embrace, to really welcome the present moment without thinking, what's next, what's next, what's next? It's as if we're always skipping the present moment because we're always in a different state, whether it's the future or the past. And many studies have concluded the importance of the present moment. And it's something you hear talk about all the
Mhm.
time. So, like at the beginning, I remember being skeptical. What's this thing with presence? Like, why does it matter if I want to think about the future? I like to think about the future. I like to plan. I like to daydream. I like
Yep.
to fantasize. What's the deal? But indeed, many studies have uncovered or presented evidence of the importance of living in the present moment for well-being. So what happens is when your mind is in the future, you're planning, you're imagining, you're worrying about something, occupied ahead of time, or you're in the past, concerned about what happened, regretting whatever it is, you're not enjoying the moment and your well-being levels go down. And so it's really
Yeah.
important to live in the present.
That's if you're familiar with the Enneagram, I am an Enneagram
Mm.
7, and that's my
Mm.
dark side, right? We laugh
Mm.
in our family that we're on vacation, we're planning the next vacation, right? And
Yeah.
instead of enjoying the moment that we're in and just really savoring that. And so my wife reminds me all the time to encourages
Mm.
me to be more in the present. So I get the value of it. Still effort for me, but I get the value of that. So thanks. So pause, presence, and then compassion. And you really, a lot of it's your compassion for self, but you also talk about in others. Help us understand that.
Yeah, oftentimes we think about compassion as just first, there are a lot of myths around it. So
Yeah.
sometimes people think of it as pity for other people, like, oh, I feel bad for you, or
Yeah.
oh, you're going through something hard. Ooh, sorry. That's not compassion. Compassion, I like to call it, is empathy in action, is the ability to identify and put ourselves in the shoes of the other person, but not just stop there or not just feel bad for the other person, but really integrate it and be willing to be of service, be willing to take action. And action can be one word of support, it can be one message, it can be stepping away, stepping back, it can be rolling up your sleeves and helping the other person move or go through their situation or whatever it is. But I think that's a beautiful distinction. And it's just, gosh, do we need compassion in the world? Is just such an important element that we really need to dial up everywhere in this beautiful planet. And then not only do we think it's pity, but then we forget about ourselves. We forget to include ourselves in the equation. And so I talk about self-compassion as a critically important element of resilience, for example. And I was also skeptical about this. I was always very rule oriented and disciplined. And I always thought, if I'm not disciplined, then I'm not going to achieve my goals, right? This whole thing
Yeah.
of being soft to myself and then feel bad for myself, that's for weak people. I'm strong. Not for me.
Yeah.
And then, oh gosh, when I truly understood it, not just intellectually, but when my body understood the importance of self-compassion, everything shifted. And I understood one, I'm not a machine. I am not meant to be productive because I'm not a product. I am not meant to just be doing, as I was just saying. We're beings. We're beings that belong to nature. And I think we have it backwards in so many ways, especially in the workplace, especially when it comes to the way we work every day. And also when going through difficulty, the importance of pausing, being in the present, and then saying, oh, gee, this is hard. Even just that. This is hard. I think this would be hard for anybody. What can I do to take care of myself in that moment?
Yeah. It's a little bit like you get on the airplane and they tell you
Yeah.
if the things drop down, right, put it on yourself first, and then you can take care of others. Because if you don't take care of yourself first, then you're not going to be able to lean into to the others. So it's a great
100%.
yeah, and we were, as you know, just with Arthur Brooks last week, and he often says, "Hey, if you're dealing with sadness, if you're dealing with something tough, go out and find somebody who's dealing with something worse, right, and help them." And it's part of the
Mm.
therapy for when we just we do have to take care of ourselves, but also, as you say, we move into the compassion for others, and we get that chance to serve them and empathy and action, and really lean into to someone else's life and walk along their challenge with them. So it's a great.
Right. Because that's the
Yeah.
other thing. Sometimes we're helping others, we're supporting others, we're in service to others, and we think the benefit is for them. But many studies have also uncovered how we benefit too. There's this notion of helper's high. I
Yeah.
I'm sure
Uh,
many people listening to us have experienced that euphoria, that sense of like feeling like high a little bit after helping somebody. It's just like this, the dopamine, there's something there that one feels really good, and two is a messenger, is a sign that we're meant to support one another.
and I think that's I think that's the for me the anchor part, and you talk so much about purpose, the anchor part of purpose, and one of the greatest books ever written by Rick Warren was Purpose Driven Life, and he starts the opening line of the book that almost everybody knows is it's not about you, right?
Yeah.
And so it begins with something outside of ourselves, and the people that you and I meet through MEA, I just find they're all trying to seek something, whether we call it meaning or whether we call it purpose, something outside themselves where they really are leaning in, and they wherever they are in life, they're trying to be and live differently with that compassion for the world, find the need in the world, and go out and meeting it. So love that point. So you got pause, presence, compassion, and then the next one's perspective. And you say, or you write, perspective is about understanding that reality is formed from the sum total of our personal experiences, which are derived from emotions and thoughts about the events of life. Help us understand perspective.
Perspective is, it follows this idea that what you focus on grows. What you focus on grows. And so, what
Mm,
is it that you're focusing on? And what I find time and again is that as human beings, we tend to focus on the negative, which makes sense. We have a negativity bias, it's just part of how we're wired in a way. But how can we begin to change that and proactively cultivate a perspective that can be at least more neutral, if not more optimistic? We're not talking about being artificially optimistic here.
right.
It's not about toxic positivity. It's about seeing the facts. So, one example would be it's raining, and the negative perspective would be, oh my God, it's raining. This place, it's always raining, but why does it rain? Like, you can't stop it from raining. So it's outside of your control.
Yeah.
Why complain? The neutral statement would be, it's raining. It's a fact. It's not positive, it's negative. It's just what it is. An optimistic one is like, oh, gee, great. Our trees really needed some water. But you don't have
Yeah.
to go all the way optimistic if it does feel real, because we don't want it to be inauthentic. But just moving toward neutral helps. The other factor that really helps is to have a growth mindset. And this is mostly
Mm.
related to when we have failures or issues. And as a recovering perfectionist, I can say that it's really easy to fall into the negative, the fixed mindset. Fixed mindset is when something happens and you think, oh my gosh, not only am I terrible at this activity, I will always be terrible. It says so much about me as a person, and I'll never be able to change it. So it's fixed, right? You personalize it, you make it pervasive, you allow it to permeate all aspects of your life, and you allow it to be permanent. Whereas a growth mindset allows you to think, oh, gee, this happened. All right, what can I learn from it? It doesn't say anything about me. It's just something that occurred, something that happened, and maybe I can learn from it. And you know what? Next time I'll take it into account. It doesn't speak about me. It's not permanent, and it shouldn't permeate other aspects of my life. So if anyone's familiar with this, you probably know what the framework's all about. But if this is new to you, I'd like to invite you to search fixed mindset versus growth mindset, because it's something that can be very practical. It
Yeah.
comes from the book Mindset by Carol Dweck. And so if this is very interesting to you, I highly recommend her book.
Yeah, and you've got lots of examples in your book about it as well that help kind of contrast, what that looks like. And again, because I'm fresh off it, one of the challenges Arthur Brooks gives his students and he gave to us was to get a perspective of things that are going difficult, things that are difficult. He calls it the disappointment or failure journal. And so he says, write down what happened to you today and own it, recognize it, live into it, but then walk away from it from a few weeks and then go back to it. And you leave a couple of lines open and go back to it a few weeks and see what perspective that you've named it, which is good to give. What perspective do you get? What lessons do you learn out about that? And then, maybe even later when it's kind of maybe still less raw, what's the benefit that came out of this thing? And so the next time we go through that thing, whatever it is, then we get to have a different perspective. And therefore helping us flourish. So great combination of wise people who are encouraging us in this. I like that.
And I would say the ultimate level of perspective, based on my experience and things I've read, is being able to give new meaning, to resignify events.
Yeah.
When we're able to get to that, especially with a dose of gratitude, then we're over it. And that's why the role of giving meaning and the role of the explanatory style, the explanation we give to events, really matters. It's not necessarily what happened, but how I think about it, how I describe it, that explanation I give to the event, the sum of the explanations of the events in our lives, that's our life. And so just a reminder of how influential that can be.
Yeah. Oh, love it. Love it. I got something to work on. I got a lot of stuff to work on, but that's just one more.
So do I. This is ongoing.
Okay, the next one is curiosity. And you say the desire to explore something within yourself or surroundings more deeply, not just an inquisitiveness that seeks to judge or satisfy, rather a loving process of introspection, gentle inquiry of connecting with your inner self and your surroundings, and searching for answers without much involvement from the mind. Wow, that's a deep deal. So you gave your story by kind of going to an ashram and getting some perspective and some insights into that. But tell us what it means to on this path, the principle of curiosity. How do we apply that?
I have to admit, this is the one that surprised me the most and the one I struggled with the most when I was writing the book. Like curiosity, that doesn't sound like one of the elements of a flourishing life. It sounds nosy or yeah, people wanting to explore other people's lives or getting, being intrusive. um, but oh, is it beautiful and is it important? And so the type of curiosity I talk about is related to a beginner's mind, Shoshin in the Zen principles, with that openness. Heart is open, the mind is open, you're open to receiving, whether it's in a conversation with somebody else, whether it's during a moment of introspection to deepen into self-awareness, self-knowledge, whether it's being in a state of awe. I've been reading a lot about that lately. It's beautiful.
Mm.
Um, that innocence and humility that allows you to learn and grow. So instead of going into an event or a conversation or something with the cup full of your opinions and your expertise and your experiences and your knowledge, you go empty. And then you can fill your cup with new knowledge, new perspectives, new experiences. I think we need more of that. That's on the external. Then, of course, internal too. It has to do with listening to your own intuition.
Mm.
And I do believe in following curiosity as if it were breadcrumbs that we're following to get us home. And so instead of sometimes life can be so uncertain and we don't know what to do and we're confused and we don't know what's next. And I always think, where does my curiosity take me? What's that next step? And my curiosity is inviting me to. And it feels like a magnet. You know what? I'm curious about this. I'm just going to go there and see what happens. And then I'm curious about that other thing. Let me just follow, right? So it can be something as simple as I'm very curious about having coffee with Jamie. And let's just chat. I don't know what, there's something about your life, your experience that makes me curious. So I'll do that.
Yeah.
I'm curious about this topic. I'm going to Google it or ChatGPT it. I just made it a verb.
Yeah.
Or we can buy a book about it, listen to this one podcast. And then you can start observing what are all the things that you're curious about. And I usually use this in purpose mentorship. What are all the things that you tend to be curious about? When you put them all together, what does that tell you? There's information there, there's data there. So curiosity is such a beautiful one. And it's actually part of the definition of mindfulness, right? So mindfulness is that ability of being in the present moment without judgment, with kindness, with curiosity. So I'm talking about that type of curiosity, that loving curiosity of being open to the world.
And how do we cultivate that? Because I try to, I think I especially encourage young people when they're meeting older people, be curious about who they are, what they do, where they've been, what their experiences are, and just want to know more. If you want to know more, just don't go, I wonder what that person's like, and instead take that step of and ask them the
Mm.
question, invite them out, whatever it is. So how have you found to cultivate curiosity if it's not something natural for you?
What you're saying, absolutely, 100% is that.
Yeah,
And that's the action part. I
yeah.
think an invitation I would offer is also observing the act of being curious without doing anything. So without the action, just the observing the moments of curiosity, the moment when something sparks a little something within you, and you go, oh, what's that? I want to double click on that.
Mhm.
Because that
Yeah.
provides you with a lot of information. And so, what is it? So, like, I became interested in self help ever since I was 12 years old. Self help books, classes, courses. We didn't have YouTube or podcasts back then. So, it was more about books that I would find in bookshelves, in bookstores. And I didn't know why. I was so curious about that, but it's just this fascination. So even observing the spark is step one, and then take action, follow that intuition. In a way, it's as if our intuition would guide us, would speak to us through
Mm.
curiosity. So let's follow it. And as you were saying, just just do something about it.
Yeah.
And it can
Yeah.
be something very subtle, but paying attention to it. I always say this is a little bit more woo-woo, but I always say the more we follow our intuition, the louder we'll start to hear it.
Mm.
Take
Yeah.
action, listen to it. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. That's great. Two more. One of my favorites,
Yes.
purpose. A calling to live, you write, it's a calling to live a life of fulfillment and meaning in alignment with your strengths, the longings from your inner self, and the intention to be of service to the world, transcending the self. Wow, that's a beautiful description of purpose. How does that look for you, and how does that look for people you work with as they pursue this flourishing life?
Oh, there's so much to say about
It
purpose. I
is.
wrote a
Yeah.
second book only focused on purpose just because
Yeah.
I needed to say more about it. I see purpose. Lately, I've been really focusing on purpose as a path we're walking. Instead of seeing it as a destination, that creates so much
Yeah.
pressure. I was reading a study the other day coming from the University of Pennsylvania that uncovered that 91% of people surveyed had at some point in their lives experienced anxiety as a result of seeking out their purpose. And 49% were currently experiencing that type of anxiety. The whole the whole process of seeking it out, waiting for it, the pressure we get of like, oh my God, I'm gonna die and I didn't
Mm.
find my purpose, right?
Yeah.
I said
Yeah.
find with air quotes because
Yeah.
we tend to think about it as something that is found. And also the anxiety of, did I find the wrong one? Maybe there's a better one. Maybe there's another one for me. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, right? And so option paralysis. And then we also have the like, what if I don't find it quickly enough? And so hurry,
Yeah.
hurry, hurry, do more, do more.
Yeah.
What if instead we were to first relax and see purpose as the path I am already walking? Not something over there waiting for me, not a treasure at the end of a rainbow, but something I'm experiencing right now. And something that is, I tend to talk about it as a verb,
Mhm.
something that evolves, something that changes, something that is dynamic. Also in plural form, because there are so many different sources of meaning. And actually, I have a lot to say about pluralism. Lately, I've been calling it that. Having lots of different ways of living out our purpose is not only possible, but it's actually recommended. We've all heard about diversifying our finances, right? But what if we were to diversify our sources of meaning as well? So if one falls, we
Yeah.
also have another one.
Yeah.
So it's a verb, it's plural, and it's imperfect. We're not going to find the answer. But what if the invitation is to keep the question alive as we walk this path?
Yeah, gosh, that's such a brilliant and beautiful explanation of it. And again, people that I've been involved with are many in a season post-retirement or getting ready for retirement where they're like, how do I now live with purpose? And just as of last week, I thought, I think I might change my tagline to live with meaning
Meaning,
instead of with purpose, right? Because for some reason, there's for me a visceral reaction to the word meaning where it's like that just sort of opens up this big umbrella of lots of different things. And then, but it's got something that is outside of myself, does transcend self. And yet those
yes.
little purposes along the way, it could be my purpose today could be to hang with my grandkids. It could be to be available for my neighbor. It could be to, you know, not getting so wrapped up in, oh my gosh, I've got to go, create some foundation, or I've got to go create a new, ministry or nonprofit or whatever it is. But instead, it's just, I just want whatever I touch, whoever experiences me and I experience them, I want to experience them with meaning. That's then how
Yes.
that looks could be just lots of different ways. Like you said, lots of little peas. Right.
I love it. Yeah, little p purpose. And what you're describing too is what the Japanese call ikigai. The traditional
Ikigai.
original
Yeah.
meaning of ikigai was that being
Yeah.
hanging out with my grandson today. That gives me
Yeah.
ikigai based on my understanding and what I've read. Eventually, there is this other book that converted it into a framework of 4 elements. And actually, last week I gave a talk to 200 people about to retire from a very large tech organization, and we talked about ikigai. And so, what does ikigai mean when you're entering retirement? And it was so fun and so full of big insights and aha moments, because purpose is not related to your job. And that's the problem.
Yeah.
We've made it so. We made it that
Yeah.
my purpose is doing marketing at
Yeah.
Google, which used to be
Yeah.
mine, right? And
Yeah.
then when I left, then what? Am I purposeless? No.
Yeah.
Sure, certainly we get to do a lot through our jobs because we spend so much time working, but there is so much more beyond it.
We could spend a long time on that
Oh
one,
yeah,
and
yes, we
maybe we
can.
will. Maybe we will again, and we'll go to book another book for you next time. But and the last one, the last of the seven, acceptance, allowing and trusting life as is with equanimity. Wow, tell us that. Unpack that one for us.
This is probably the hardest one, for me
Yeah.
at least. And some people who've read the book told me the same. It's really easy to accept and to surrender, because we tend to think of surrendering as giving up. I'm
Yeah.
surrendering. Oh, I couldn't deal with it. I give up. But the invitation with acceptance is to observe what is happening. So what it applies all the elements, actually, all the principles. You pause, you're in presence, and then you observe with perspective what is within my control, what isn't. What is within your control, go and do something about it. Please do. But what
Yeah.
is not, just surrender, accept. And I do believe in a higher intelligence, in our intuition, in something that is guiding us. And I do believe that when we don't fight what is, our well-being increases. Makes me think of The Work by Byron Katie. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's a beautiful framework that invites us to not fight what is. And then in the book, I talk about the formula for suffering. We talk about the formula for happiness all the time. Might as well invert it. And so I
Yeah.
went
Right.
there with my current husband, who I talk about in the book and how we met and
Yeah.
how it all evolved. He's a mathematician, and we ended up developing the formula of suffering, and then we inverted it. And what we
Yeah.
uncovered, mathematically speaking, was that acceptance allows us to increase our well-being, because it's rejection of the present moment what increases resistance, and that resistance diminishes our ability to be well today, right now.
Mm.
So there's so much more we can talk about acceptance
Yeah,
as well.
yeah. Well, I love all of that, and just as I'll quickly go through them again as people are kind of we're wrapping up here. Pause. Oops, I just scrolled too far. Pause. Presence, compassion, perspective, curiosity, purpose, and acceptance. And so all that leads to a flourishing life. Describe in a few sentences what you see as a flourishing life.
At the end of the book, once you put together all of these elements, and once we get to cultivate each one, I don't talk about acing each element or doing
Yeah.
it once and you're done. It's an ongoing life practice. Rain, trust me, I have to put this into work every day. But once we put them all together, we get to a different level of flourishing, where we go back to who we truly are, our true essence, which is unlimited, which is interconnected, which is okay. That side of us, that part of us that is okay, regardless of what's happening on the surface. Once we connect to that inner self, that true essence, then we get to a different level of flourishing. In order to do that, we may need to transcend the ego, which I talk about in the book.
Yeah.
Not to hate it, it plays a role, not to reject it altogether, but to work with it in order for us to see beyond that external narrative of our identity that we've created. And once we get to it, the way I see it is the flourishing life is who we already are, like the sky. The sky is always there. Sometimes it's covered by thick clouds. And so what we have to do is remove it, kind of like discover your flourishing, discover, remove what's covering what your stable, real state already is. So it's not something to strive for, it's something that we already have within. And we just have to kind of remove what's preventing us from connecting with it.
Well done. Thank you so much. You're wise. You're so easy to listen to, and just so enjoyable. So thanks for sharing your story, your struggles, your wisdom, and we're just so thankful you spent an hour with us today. So hopefully we'll come back and talk about some of these in a maybe some of them at a deeper level. But would love to have you back to do that. So thanks for being with us today.
Would love it. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for making it all the way here. And I wish everyone a flourishing day and a flourishing life.
Thank you for joining our podcast today. If you want to learn more about Carolina, her website is carolinalasso.com. Her books are available on Amazon. And if you really want to go deeper with her, check out her Modern Elder Academy retreat that she's going to be co-leading September 29th through October 4th in Baja, California. You can reach Modern Elder Academy through www.meawisdom.com. If you want to learn more about Finishing Strong or are interested in retirement coaching, contact me through our website, www.finishing-strong.org.